one of the issues, I was with my teacher yesterday, and he was reading a book, and I don't want anybody to panic, but there was this book that was written that was called Islam and Homosexuality. And in it, the author goes on to try to make all these kinds of cases. And in the discussion, we kind of came to this realization that the bigger issue, and nobody fly off, wasn't just the homosexuality part that they were trying to advocate for. What was lying beneath the surface of this was essentially the thought process of modern life, which is heavily informed by liberalism, which says that desire, whether inborn or inbred, is that which gets to dictate reality.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. This is Imam Mark here from Middle Ground Center with a new piece that we call the follow-up. And in this, it's a short video piece that I want to take an opportunity to reflect upon the sermon from the Friday before, or perhaps even a lecture from before, in which I go a little bit more in depth, or maybe just highlight a certain point that I wanted to go a little bit further in on, or clarify a point. So we call that the follow-up. This past Friday, I gave a khutbah, a sermon, on the topic of ungoverned passions, particularly relating to a term that God uses in the Quran in the Arabic called hawa, or what we might call ungoverned passions or unchecked passions. And in that conversation, in the beginning, I talked about particularly the relationship between religion and liberalism. And I want to make a point here. I'm not talking about kind of a subcategory of liberalism, which might say political liberalism or something else like that, but really more the broader overarching construct of liberalism, and how it, as a tool of particularly the modern state or modern societies, which is wanted to very much domesticate religion. And that idea is that, religion is something it's a private experience, which undoubtedly there are aspects of religion that are private, and some important aspects of it that actually are and should remain very private, so that one has a very heartfelt relationship with God and is very sincere. However, it also wants to relegate religion primarily to the private sphere, where there is essentially no appropriate place for religion in the public sphere. And related to this sermon and our topic today, that is partly in the way that liberalism essentially feels that desires are king. As I said, that desires should be they should be indulged, they should be placated, and essentially have no governance placed upon them. And from the orthodox opinion in Islam, and perhaps really in revealed religion period, is that God very well will call upon you in order for you to have a very meaningful relationship with God, is that it may ask you to govern or have some type of negotiation of your desires and your passions. And again, this comes into conflict. So we take a very obvious and perhaps crude example of, say, homosexuality and the way that it is talked about in the modern context. And many of those that are arguing in favor of not simply just homosexuality, but particularly with the part that Islam would be concerned with, would be the committing of homosexual acts, is that because you were born with it, then this is essentially a carte blanche or an open invitation to indulge those passions for no other reason than you were born with them, and that is a non-negotiable piece. And And the orthodox opinion in Islam would essentially say, well, I mean, of course, there's the Quran to deal with in terms of the verses negating the permissibility. But even those aside, we would say that, well, what if I'm a heterosexual person and I have heterosexual desires? Can I indulge them with impunity without any kind of, say, fencing in or any kind of negotiation of where and how it is appropriate? And more, as society has become more liberal, has been the throwing off of anything that may inconvenience people, and this is even stretched and extended to religion, where the believer can no longer be subjected to any kind of governance, even if it's divine law, and therefore all sorts of passions can be indulged. So, classic, and I hate to just use the word classic, but certainly classic Orthodox Islamic scholarship and even non-classic Orthodox Islamic scholarship would say that simply because a person has a desire, whether that's an inbred desire or an inborn desire, is irrelevant. The question is, how does that desire negotiate with what has been revealed, and in our case, either through the Quran or through the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him. So we have to ask ourselves, has there been nothing said about it? Has there, and even beyond the more obvious example, say, of homosexuality, whether it be just sexual relations, greed, pursuit of material wealth. There's many areas in which we would say that the desire for a thing, whether it's inbred or inborn, is not central to the conversation between what God asks of us in this life. So I wanted to kind of take that opportunity just to clarify what I was talking about here. And again, as I said, in the sermon, I have some issues sometimes when I read certain types of Muslim literature, devotional literature, pietistic literature, that calls upon Muslims to almost go to the other end, that you have to kill your nafs or kill your soul, or you have to have no desires whatsoever. And again, I find that when you go to the source of the Quran or the source of the life of the Prophet, you don't find that we are being asked to destroy something. Matter of fact, you could almost take an Einsteinian point of view in that, matter cannot be created or destroyed, it can only be altered, and therefore we don't really have the capacity to destroy our nafs. What we're asked is to alter and to renegotiate what we may want or desire, and have a conversation and a consideration of what God has to say about that. And again, that's my observation, that a lot in modern society, that they're essentially liberalism, very much tied to individualism, doesn't want to have any consideration, right? It's almost flat. Religion has to consider the individual. The individual doesn't have to consider God. So that's kind of one of the main pieces that I wanted to. The other was, in light of that, if one no longer considers what God has to say, then another synonym of the word hawa is the word huwa, huwatun, which is a synonym in Arabic which means an endless pit. They come from the same root word, and in fact, unchecked desires can become like an endless black pit. And this has obvious detrimental effects for the individual in terms of our personal lives or things that we may fall into. But talking of liberalism, right, when it reaches a societal level, then if the pursuits of things no longer have any governance other than just our own whims and passions, then we begin to see the degradation of society as a whole, which is why I quoted the verse from the 45th chapter, Surah Al-Jathiyah, in which God says, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مِنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you not seen the one that takes for his God his passions? So, I felt that this was, a worthy topic, just this one aspect of it to go into. And again, this isn't, my use of the word liberalism here is not in the typical way that we may think in terms of politics, say, Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative, not just simply in those kind of colloquial uses of the word, but really talking about them on a broader philosophical level, and what are the implications for those for us to consider. Inshallah, I hope that this will be of some use for us to contemplate and give us some food for thought until next Friday, and as always, be a means for us to achieve guidance in this life so that we can lead a dignified existence in this life and in the next, inshallah. Imam Mark Manley here from Middle Ground Muslim Center. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.